They said curiosity built civilizations. On Earth, it just kept us alive. At the Galactic Academy of Sciences, surrounded by species that had never known hunger, venom, or night hunters, Nathan Cole sat perfectly still, a lone human among creatures who thought they understood evolution. The room smelled of ozone and arrogance. Above the professor's dais, holograms of lush worlds spun slowly, safe, beautiful, predictable, the kind of worlds that raised philosophers, not survivors. Professor Veskar tapped one claw against the podium, mandibles clicking with practiced rhythm. Today, he announced, we examine why intelligence cannot emerge on Deathworld's places where life itself rejects survival. The class laughed sharp, confident, superior. Nathan didn't. He only exhaled once, the ghost of a smile on his face, as if he already knew how the lecture would end. The amphitheater-style hall buzzed with the sound of alien amusement. Some species emitted static pulses, others trilled or rattled. One crystalline life form even produced light in rhythmic flashes as a form of laughter. To Nathan, it was all chaos. Not the kind he grew up with, but the curated, polished chaos of species so secure in their own safety they'd forgotten what real threat felt like. He didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. Holograms rotated above the professor's head, displaying charts of planetary evolution models. Each showed a gentle curve flora overtaking rock, herbivores populating plains, predator populations declining as intelligence rose. They looked clean, linear, sensible. Observe, Veskar continued, gesturing toward a shimmering representation of a lush, oxygen-rich world. The typical progression from chaos to order, from tooth to tool. Intelligence arises only when survival becomes predictable. No predator becomes a philosopher. No being learns ethics while running from extinction. Fear inhibits cognition. Panic crushes collaboration. He turned, antennae twitching in smug emphasis. Only in calm environments where life stabilizes does evolution dare create minds. Another ripple of laughter surged through the crowd. Nathan didn't move. The only human in the hall, he was easily missed unless one looked directly. Earth standard gravity required that his seat be reinforced with a hydraulic brace. The chair hissed faintly every time he adjusted his posture. He hadn't done that once in the last hour. What drew the eye, if anyone looked closely, was the faint white line on the inside of his forearm, barely visible beneath the Academy-issued short sleeve. A scar, not decorative. The kind that stays with you through dozens of dermal regenerations. It traced along the line of a tendon, sharp and surgical like something had once been inside his arm and then wasn't. The professor's pointer limb swept dramatically across the room again. And so we ask, what species could possibly survive long enough to form civilization on a death world? The very idea is illogical. More laughter, this time louder. Even the ambient system seemed to hum with approval. The walls, laced with light-reactive crystals, pulsed faintly. The ambient lighting shifted warmer, indicating consensus among the connected AI tutors. Veskar's voice took on a performative lilt. Even our Terran guest, Mr. Cole, must surely understand. His species knows fear's cost better than most. Do you not agree, cadet? The room turned. Hundreds of alien eyes and analogs focused on him, some bulbous, some compound, some single-lidded and expressionless. Each pair waited for his agreement, his submission, his confirmation that Earth, like all death worlds, was an evolutionary fluke, best forgotten. Nathan didn't respond at first. His eyes were half-lowered, not in deference, but as if measuring a fault line. A flicker passed through the AI translator interface. The thin strip above the dais hesitated not due to a technical fault, but classification. It could not assign an emotion to the human's expression. Not anger, not shame, not confusion. Just thought. Then how am I here? His voice was level, the phrasing sharp but soft, like a scalpel. It wasn't rhetorical. The room didn't laugh this time. Even the walls dimmed slightly, confused by the shift in emotional current. The holograms stuttered, flickered, then restabilized. No one spoke. A data stylus clattered to the floor from someone's desk, the sound ricocheting across the metal tiles like a dropped knife. A reptilian cadet near the front whispered, her voice hoarse with unease. He's joking, right? Veskar forced a chuckle, but it rang hollow. Very clever, Mr. Cole. But surely humanity's reputation is exaggerated. Nathan didn't reply. He simply leaned forward and tapped on his desk interface. With a swipe, he projected a planetary profile to the center of the room. The AI hesitated for only a nanosecond before complying. And then Earth-Terra replaced the elegant graphs. Its data didn't scroll. It crashed. Gravity, 1 grams above galactic average. Temperature variance plus or minus 80 degrees Celsius, dangerous to biological equilibrium. Apex predator density, off scale. Warning, calculations not feasible. Error margin exceeds standard deviation. Radiation levels, multiple zones at mutation thresholds. Seismic activity, high. Volcanism, active. Historical extinction events, 17 major. 4, mass scale. Dominant species lifespan, variable. Median, 72 Earth cycles. Biological biodiversity, extreme. Estimated 8.7 million species co-evolved. Classification, chaotic biosphere. Atmospheric composition, safe for Terrans only. Others require filtered environments or risk cellular degradation. The projector blinked, then zoomed in. A metallic ring encircling the planet shimmered faintly. It looked scarred, as though incomplete. A student squinted at the image. What are those? Nathan looked up again. Cities. We built them after the sky tried to kill us. The AI hesitated, then added a footnote. Global satellite network remnants. Estimated reconstruction following solar flare event. Terrestrial infrastructure. Rebuilt 10 times in 6,000 years due to planetary disasters. The classroom didn't just fall silent, it stopped moving. Some students who relied on pheromone signals detected something off. From the human, they smelled nothing. No fear, no challenge, no pheromonal signature at all. It was like he didn't register the same way life was supposed to. Nathan stood. He didn't pace or perform. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. We didn't evolve in comfort, he said. We evolved in pursuit. Faster things ran, stronger things killed. So, we ran faster, killed smarter. And when we couldn't outrun or outfight what hunted us, we hid, dug in, survived. We didn't have the luxury of peace. He lifted his hand slightly, palm open. The scar on his wrist caught the light. When it got too cold, we found fire. When it got too hot, we built shade. When venom killed our children, we studied it. When teeth ripped flesh, we learned to stitch it back. The silence thickened. Fear didn't stop us. It taught us. It didn't block collaboration. It forced it. Evolution wasn't a gentle guide. It was a hammer. And we were the metal. Beskar tried to interject, but failed. His translator blinked, unsure of how to translate what the human's tone implied. Not threat, not warning. Something else. History. Nathan looked around, his eyes meeting each of theirs. Calm. Not defiant, tired, maybe, like someone who had tried explaining before. And when our planet finally calmed down, he said softly, we turned on each other. No one breathed. No one laughed. And far below the academy, in the environmental system's core, a routine diagnostic flagged Earth's data file as a potential system corruption, not because it was wrong, but because it defied every assumption the database was built on. Nathan sat back down. The lights did not brighten. The walls remained dim. Professor Veskar stood frozen behind his podium, his limbs half-curled in shock. The Deathworld hypothesis had never accounted for this. And from the very back of the lecture hall, under the quiet whir of reinforced hydraulics, the human's chair hissed faintly as Nathan shifted his weight. Scar still visible. Still healing. Still here. The lecture hall emptied with the sound of nervous silence. Classes at the Galactic Academy typically dissolved into discussion, into side projects, into social clusters, exchanging theories in dozens of dialects. Not today. Not after what they had seen. Nathan stayed seated. He wasn't waiting for applause. He wasn't even waiting for Veskar. He was waiting for the tremble in his left shoulder to stop. It didn't. Not fully. He rotated the joint slowly under his sleeve until the stiffness gave way to a dull ache. The implant was reacting to the atmosphere again. The humidity on Traga 9, barely noticeable to most sapients, was just enough to affect the grafted musculature fused into his rotator cuff. He glanced down at the small warning tag on his wrist. Yellow. Inflammation again. Behind the podium, Professor Veskar was still staring at the now idle holograms. His mandibles were parted slightly. His antennae drooped in what the translation system gently labeled as disorientation. Finally, Veskar deactivated the display. The light from the Deathworld data faded. The silence lingered. Nathan, the professor said, using his name directly for the first time in over a cycle, was any of that dramatized? Nathan didn't answer right away. Not because he was being difficult. He was calculating how much of the truth would even register. Instead, he tapped the side of his desk. A medical file appeared his own, visible to faculty. Veskar blinked rapidly as it populated. 10 fractures, the professor read aloud, confused. 7 surgeries. Degenerative ligament damage. Partial lung reconstruction. Nathan rolled up his sleeve slowly. Scarred tissue ran up from the inside of his elbow to the tricep. There were small raised dots along the seam where the surgical staples had been. Collapse, 6 years ago. Avalanche, Nathan said plainly. Arm was pinned under the rock. Took 12 hours to dig me out. Blood supply was already compromised. Couldn't regenerate tissue fast enough. Why not amputate? They did, but not the whole limb. Reattached what they could. Grafted synth fiber where the nerves were dead. It works. Veskar leaned forward, genuinely horrified. You went back to your duties? With an arm like that? 4 months later, Nathan nodded. That's standard for a partial reattachment. To your people? The professor asked. No, to me. Something cracked in Veskar's composure. Not anger, not fear. Just something far subtler, a foundational understanding beginning to rot at its base. The idea that comfort bred wisdom, that peace nurtured complexity, all now in doubt. The professor changed tactics. Pain, surely you manage that. You have suppression fields, gene therapy buffers? Pain's how we know we're not dead, Nathan said. We manage it, but we don't erase it. That's how people get killed. You don't feel pain, you miss the damage. But the trauma? Is there? Nathan cut in. We carry it. Veskar looked at the file again. Cardiac anomaly? Stress-induced arrhythmia. Common among soldiers. I'm stable. The professor's antennae curled tighter. And you volunteered for off-world service? Nathan nodded. Why? He exhaled. Because that's how we learn what the rest of the galaxy actually thinks of us. That silenced even the room's ambient systems again. No one had ever thought of humanity as scholars of other species' perceptions. The Terrans were known for their diplomats, yes, and their soldiers, certainly, but not for their need to understand how others saw them. Before Veskar could reply, another student entered. Tall, reptilian, scaled in interwoven plates the color of oxidized copper. She walked with an unhurried grace that broadcasted senior rank. Cadet Cole, she said, you're summoned to medical. Nathan stood without protest. His left arm twitched slightly as he moved. The professor looked up sharply. Is this about his records? She turned her reptilian gaze to Veskar and blinked slowly. No. He was due for a joint stress scan this morning. Delay in scheduling. Standard procedure for humans with partial grafts. Nathan gave a tight smile. You can watch if you want, Professor. That was not a challenge, it was an offer. Veskar hesitated, then followed. The medical wing of the academy resembled a museum more than a clinic, sterile, immaculate, and far too quiet. The walls glowed with indirect bioluminescence that adjusted to each species' visual comfort. Instruments hovered midair, designed to accommodate anatomy with anything from fins to exoskeletons. Nathan sat on the table, arm bare, as a diagnostic arch passed over him. The room hissed as a new sterile field activated. The attending medic was a quadruped with 4 independent eye stalks. It spoke through a subharmonic vocalizer. Human joint structure confirmed. Minor inflammation. Confirmed adhesion between graft and original tendon mass. Ligament deterioration, consistent with Earth Trauma Class 4B. Recommend hydro tissue buffer every 28 hours. Nathan gave a nod. The medic paused. Nerve sensitivity remains high. Pain reflex intact. Are you requesting local numbing before the joint flexion test? Nathan shook his head. Better without it. I need to know the limits. The arm test began. It wasn't graceful. He gritted his teeth as the pressure increased. The synthetic tendons strained visible beneath the skin as the joint resisted. 60 degrees, the medic noted aloud. 70, 85. Nathan exhaled through his nose, tight, restrained. The machine beeped. Range of motion exceeded recommended threshold, it said. Risk of tearing. Nathan dropped his arm, shaking it loose. Sweat clung to his hairline now. Veskar had watched all of it. He hadn't spoken. When the human hopped off the table and pulled his sleeve back down, the professor finally found his voice again. You endured that just to check your limits? Nathan nodded once. If I don't know them, I can't adapt. Veskar stared at him for a long moment. Do all your kind endure this? Nathan hesitated. Not all. Some break, some stop. But the ones who keep going, they're the ones who end up here. He didn't mean the academy. He meant alive. Later, back in the lecture hall, Veskar sat alone. He accessed the Earth database again. This time, he looked beyond the climate data. He pulled planetary medical statistics, injury survival rates, infant mortality, common causes of death. He saw something horrifying: progress through pain. Each advancement was earned in blood. Vaccines discovered under plague conditions. Field surgery developed during wars. Prosthetics improved under disaster recovery efforts. Then, he found something stranger. A note in the data archive. Cultural marker: resilience is a skill. Not a trait. A skill. Learned. Veskar leaned back. He tapped into Nathan's academic record next. The human's grades were solid, not top percentile, but close. What stood out was the psychological review required for Deathworld origin students. Cadet Cole demonstrates high adaptability. Trauma history present. Recovery consistent with Terran resilience protocols. No intervention required. No intervention. The Academy assumed Nathan's psychological scarring was normal. Expected. Healthy, even. Veskar sat still for a long time. And in the darkness of the now empty lecture hall, a phrase echoed back at him. Then how am I here? He had no answer. Not one he liked, anyway. But he was starting to realize something deeply unsettling. Maybe intelligence didn't require peace. Maybe it just required enough pain to become necessary. 3 days passed. The Academy didn't talk about the lecture, not openly, but Nathan noticed things. Alien cadets who had once smiled with shallow politeness now looked at him with something sharper. Not distrust, exactly. Recognition. Like someone who finally realized the thing across the table had teeth. The whispers weren't in English, but the translator caught the tone. Deathworlder. Adapted, not born. Muscle over mind. He let it pass. Most days, Nathan kept his routine unchanged. Physical therapy at dawn, 2 classes before midday meal, a daily journal to send back to Earth, though he knew no one read it in real time. Terran communications were still classified, Tier 2, too slow to keep up with daily exchanges at the Academy. On the 4th day, he received a summons. Not medical this time. The Behavioral Biology Department. Subsection: Cognitive Evolution. Room 417 Psi. He frowned at the symbol. Psi marked it as a cross-disciplinary research space rarely used for cadets. Still, he went. The room was smaller than he expected. Not sterile like the lecture halls or med bays. Warm. Slightly humid. Dim lighting filtered through a thick glass panel on the ceiling, simulating an overcast sky. Inside waited 4 beings. Veskar. Of course. A Sulekian neurologist with 3 neural crests and a floating pupil that shifted independently of its eyes. A Torkra bioethicist, mostly cartilage, her skin shimmering with a photosensitive lattice. And a botanoid, no name given, The translator offered only a vague identifier. Observing entity. Nathan didn't sit until they gestured for it. The table before them lit up. "Mr. Cole," said the neurologist, "we're conducting a study on fear-based evolution. You've been selected as a candidate example." "Selected how?" Nathan asked. "Your medical history," the Torquer said, "your academic performance, your planet's profile, and your conversation in Vescar's class." Nathan glanced sideways at the professor. He didn't look smug this time. He looked tired. "Is this disciplinary?" Nathan asked flatly. "No," said the neurologist. "It's science." The botonoid chimed in with a pulse of soft color. The translator interpreted, "We want to understand how fear became your species' fuel, not its prison." Nathan leaned back, expression neutral. "Start with what you want to know." The questioning didn't feel hostile. It felt like anthropology with a microscope. Every answer led to 10 more questions. Not just about history, about biology, culture, tolerance thresholds. How often did your species encounter predation after sapiens emerged? Often enough that we built cities with walls for 3,000 years. Did your species develop empathy as a survival mechanism? Empathy let us work in groups. Groups let us hunt bigger things, or survive being hunted. Your adrenaline response, it damages tissue over time, correct? Long term, yeah, that's what stress does. Yeah. And yet you rely on it? Nathan shrugged. "Wouldn't be sitting here without it." The Sulekian paused, rotating its crest in a slow arc. "You evolved, knowing your body would betray itself from overuse? We evolved, knowing we might die anyway." The botonoid pulsed again. "And you continued?" Nathan didn't blink. "We had to." That answer froze the room. Even Vescar, who had tried so hard to maintain a scientist's detachment, made a soft, involuntary click deep in his chest cavity. "You said your species didn't stop hunting," he muttered. "You just changed the rules." Nathan nodded. "We're still predators, just selective now. We hunt disease, disaster, injustice. We look for what's killing us and we go after it." The table flickered as the AI system tried to reclassify that statement. The neurologist looked uncertain. "That's not how most species operate. Once survival is assured, aggression typically fades." Nathan's reply was quiet. It didn't fade. It just got complicated. The Torquer tilted her head. "Explain." Nathan took a breath. This was the part most aliens never liked. Fear kept us alive, but it didn't make us good. We turned on each other. For resources, for land, for power. Some of our worst predators looked just like us. The Sulekian twitched. "Your species self-hunts?" "In cycles," Nathan admitted. "We learn, we try, we fail, we try again." "And you consider this acceptable?" "No," he said plainly. "But we don't lie about it." That silenced them again. After a long pause, the botonoid pulsed gently. A question. "Do you dream?" Nathan blinked. "Yes." "What of?" He hesitated. Sometimes it was fire, other times, faces. Once in a while, just running. No destination, no explanation. Just the sense that something was behind him, and if he slowed down, it would catch up. But he didn't say any of that. He only answered, "Mostly Earth." The next day, the Academy's internal network updated its database on human biology. It now included a subsection titled, "The second time it happened, the translator didn't even try." During a xenopsychology seminar, a feline-evolved instructor from the Idari system used Earth as a counterexample again, not out of malice but ignorance. She projected a model of Earth's atmospheric history and shook her head. A species cannot thrive with a biosphere this chaotic. It breaks every known model. Nathan didn't flinch. He simply raised one hand. The room turned to him. No tension this time, only anticipation. The instructor hesitated. "Cadet Cole?" Nathan's eyes scanned the projection. "Can you zoom in on orbital layer 72? She did. A faint scatter of data points flickered around Earth's exosphere. Debris. Satellite remnants. Decommissioned stations. Then the new ring came into view. Dozens of linked constructs, metallic, wide, spanning half the planet. "What is that?" someone asked. Nathan looked tired, not annoyed, just tired. Skyforge Array, self-repairing satellite infrastructure. We built it after the second K-class solar event burned out half the planet's power grid. The instructor frowned. A solar flare that large would fry all unshielded electronics. It did. And your species survived? He nodded once. How? Nathan shrugged slightly. Some didn't. The quiet was absolute. The instructor paused the projection. You rebuilt orbital infrastructure? After that? We had to, he said. Losing power meant losing hospitals, water purification, food storage. It took less than 3 days before people started dying just from heat stroke and dehydration. Cities went dark, roads melted, backup systems fried. One of the crystalline students asked softly, "What did you do?" Nathan answered without drama. Dug, sheltered, moved at night, organized local generators, recovered solar panels that hadn't been shattered, built what we could, waited for the atmosphere to calm. The Idari instructor's ears twitched. And the orbital rebuild? He hesitated. We launched again 13 years later, a joint effort, old rivals working together. We didn't have much choice. Climate's unpredictable now. Infrastructure has to be off-world or it melts. She squinted at the data again. What's the heat tolerance of those platforms? Up to 2,000 degrees Celsius. Self-cooling alloys. Terran patent. We test them by firing controlled solar beams during sunspot cycles. The room went still again. Someone exhaled, reverently. You test your tech by attacking it with your own star? Nathan looked around slowly. We don't build for likely. We build for what already killed us once. The academy changed after that. Not in sweeping ways, but in hundreds of smaller ones. Students began logging into the Terran historical archives, not for military files, for infrastructure, emergency planning, medical resilience, engineering under pressure. Nathan noticed it in the halls. No more side glances, no more whispered slurs. Instead, nods, respectful distance. Once, a young Amaran student, nervous, soft-spoken, barely a second-cycle cadet, approached him during mess. My species has a floodplain culture, she said quietly. We lose homes every 2 seasons. We rebuild. It always felt shameful, like we were behind the rest of the galaxy. Nathan looked at her plate. She hadn't touched her food. It's not shame, he said. It's practice. She looked up. He pushed his tray toward her. Eat. You'll need the energy next time you rebuild. She smiled. Just a little. Then ate. Veskar found Nathan again near the archive lifts. The professor looked older somehow. Not physically, just diminished. The kind of man who'd found the edge of a map and realized the world didn't stop there. I reviewed the Deathworld models, Veskar said without preamble. We were wrong. Nathan didn't gloat. I know. I tried rerunning the hypothesis. Added your data. The model failed. Nathan raised an eyebrow. That's a good thing? It doesn't feel like it. Nathan nodded. Truth rarely does. Veskar was quiet for a moment. I was arrogant. You were wrong, Nathan corrected, not unkindly. Same thing, sometimes. The professor took a breath. You made us see something we weren't ready for. You were ready, Nathan said. You just didn't know it. He turned to leave, but Veskar stopped him. One last question. Nathan paused. Do you think, Veskar asked, your species will ever stop adapting? Nathan looked at him. And smiled, slow and small. No. And if we ever do, it'll mean we've stopped surviving. Back in his dorm, Nathan pulled the bandage off his shoulder. The swelling had gone down. The hydro tissue was working, but it would take another week before he could lift full weight again. He logged the status manually, then tapped a voice memo. The second time it happened, the translator didn't even try. During a xenopsychology seminar, a feline-evolved instructor from the Idari system used Earth as a counterexample again, not out of malice, but ignorance. She projected a model of Earth's atmospheric history and shook her head. A species cannot thrive with a biosphere this chaotic. It breaks every known model. Nathan didn't flinch. He simply raised one hand. The room turned to him. No tension this time, only anticipation. The instructor hesitated. Cadet Cole? Nathan's eyes scanned the projection. Can you zoom in on orbital layer 72? She did. A faint scatter of data points flickered around Earth's exosphere. Debris. Satellite remnants. Decommissioned stations. Then, the new ring came into view. Dozens of linked constructs, metallic, wide, spanning half the planet. What is that? Someone asked. Nathan looked tired. Not annoyed. Just tired. Skyforge Array. Self-repairing satellite infrastructure. We built it after the second K-class solar event burned out half the planet's power grid. The instructor frowned. A solar flare that large would fry all unshielded electronics. It did. And your species survived? He nodded once. How? Nathan shrugged slightly. Some didn't. The quiet was absolute. The instructor paused the projection. You rebuild orbital infrastructure? After that? We had to, he said. Losing power meant losing hospitals, water purification, food storage. It took less than 3 days before people started dying just from heat stroke and dehydration. Cities went dark, roads melted, backup systems fried. One of the crystalline students asked softly, "What did you do?" Nathan answered without drama. Dug, sheltered, moved at night, organized local generators, recovered solar panels that hadn't been shattered, built what we could, waited for the atmosphere to calm. The Adari instructor's ears twitched. And the orbital rebuild? He hesitated. We launched again 13 years later, a joint effort, old rivals working together. We didn't have much choice. Climate's unpredictable now. Infrastructure has to be off-world, or it melts. She squinted at the data again. What's the heat tolerance of those platforms? Up to 2,000 degrees Celsius. Self-cooling alloys. Terran patent. We test them by firing controlled solar beams during sunspot cycles. The room went still again. Someone exhaled, reverently. You test your tech by attacking it with your own star? Nathan looked around slowly. We don't build for likely. We build for what already killed us once. The academy changed after that. Not in sweeping ways, but in hundreds of smaller ones. Students began logging into the Terran historical archives, not for military files, for infrastructure, emergency planning, medical resilience, engineering under pressure. Nathan noticed it in the halls. No more side glances, no more whispered slurs. Instead, nods. Respectful distance. Once, a young Amaran student, nervous, soft-spoken, barely a second cycle cadet, approached him during mess. My species has a floodplain culture, she said quietly. We lose homes every 2 seasons. We rebuild. It always felt shameful, like we were behind the rest of the galaxy. Nathan looked at her plate. She hadn't touched her food. It's not shame, he said. It's practice. She looked up. He pushed his tray toward her. Eat. You'll need the energy next time you rebuild. She smiled. Just a little. Then ate. Veskar found Nathan again near the archive lifts. The professor looked older somehow, not physically. Just diminished. The kind of man who'd found the edge of a map and realized the world didn't stop there. I reviewed the Deathworld models, Veskar said without preamble. We were wrong. Nathan didn't gloat. I know. I tried rerunning the hypothesis. Added your data. The model failed. Nathan raised an eyebrow. That's a good thing. It doesn't feel like it. Nathan nodded. Truth rarely does. Veskar was quiet for a moment. I was arrogant. You were wrong, Nathan corrected, not unkindly. Same thing sometimes. The professor took a breath. You made us see something we weren't ready for. You were ready, Nathan said. You just didn't know it. He turned to leave, but Veskar stopped him. One last question. Nathan paused. Do you think, Veskar asked, your species will ever stop adapting? Nathan looked at him and smiled. Slow and small. No, and if we ever do, it'll mean we've stopped surviving. Back in his dorm, Nathan pulled the bandage off his shoulder. The swelling had gone down, The hydro tissue was working, but it would take another week before he could lift full weight again. He logged the status manually. Then tapped a voice memo. Day 202. Joint stability improving. Minor inflammation expected through end of cycle. No incidents. Students interacting more. Faculty adjusting. One instructor asked if we ever stop adapting. I didn't say what I wanted to. He paused. I wanted to say we never started. We just never had a choice. He ended the log. Outside, the artificial sky dimmed for sleep cycle. But Earth's projection still hovered above the courtyard, a new addition since the lecture. No longer labeled as an evolutionary paradox. Just Terra. Homeworld, human. Classification, Deathworld, inhabited. It started with a rock. Not a weapon, or a monument, or a tool, just a rock. Palm-sized, dark, smooth. Placed on the edge of a desk in Lecture Hall Theta 9. Professor Veskar found it after his final seminar of the cycle. The room had cleared, the lights had dimmed, and the echo of his own words from earlier that day still lingered. He picked it up slowly. His fingers scanned the surface oddly warm, despite the chilled air. It wasn't from Traga 9. He knew that before scanning it. The analysis confirmed it. Basalt. Origin. Earth. Age. 17 million cycles. Slightly radioactive. Trace carbon scoring as though it had once passed through fire. At the same time, on the third sublevel of the Academy's research wing, Nathan Cole stood still inside a containment scan bubble. It hissed shut with a seal that sounded too final for comfort. Cadet, said the technician. This is routine. Cross-species pathogen screening before planetary departure. It won't take long. Nathan nodded. Departure. The word stuck with him. He wasn't being dismissed. His time was simply up. The Earth-Terra Cultural Exchange Program limited cadet enrollment to 1 standard year. No exceptions. Too long on foreign worlds increased immune risk for both sides. His grafted arm itched under the scan field. You're clear, the tech said. No quarantine needed. Nathan stepped out. Another technician handed him a standard vac-sealed travel pack. Inside was everything he'd brought, and a few things he hadn't. A sealed copy of the revised Deathworld curriculum. A small, handwritten note from the Amaran student. A stylized rendering of the Skyforge array, done in crystalline ink, by a classmate. And a single flat disk, a gift from the Botanoid Observer. It pulsed faintly with data. No translation, just light. He didn't need words to understand it. He walked the courtyard one last time. The academy was quieter than usual. A rest cycle, perhaps. Or maybe no one wanted to crowd him. Too many questions unanswered. Too much truth, too fresh. The Earth projection still hovered above the courtyard. It had changed. Now, it showed orbital scars, tectonic fractures, firestorm tracks. Not as warnings, but as memories. He stopped beneath it. Veskar was waiting. No lecture hall, no students. Just two beings shaped by opposite philosophies, one by comfort, the other by catastrophe. Your transport arrives in 17 minutes, the professor said. Nathan nodded. I reviewed your file again, Veskar said. There was a note I missed. Nathan waited. It said you were functionally unremarkable by human military standards. Nathan smiled. That's accurate. Veskar looked at him. You're one of the toughest things I've ever seen. I'm one of the average ones, Nathan replied. That silenced the professor more than anything else ever had. They sat together in the courtyard's edge alcove, a low bench, barely long enough for one, but neither moved. Veskar finally spoke. I deleted the original lecture, the one about why Deathworlds can't produce intelligence. Nathan looked over. You could have revised it. I thought about it, Veskar admitted. But there's a difference between knowledge and understanding. The data was right, the conclusions were wrong. I think, some truths aren't meant to be taught. Nathan nodded once, only survived. A quiet settled between them. The shuttle descended silently, just a shape above the clouds at first, then brighter, hotter, louder. It shimmered with Terran alloy, the kind designed to slough off heat like water. Veskar stood. Nathan followed. They didn't shake hands. That wasn't part of Veskar's culture. Instead, he held out the basalt rock. You left this. I meant to. Veskar frowned faintly. It's not just a rock, Nathan said. It's from a lava flow near my home range. It cooled fast, under pressure. A fragment from a place that was once too hot to survive. Veskar turned it over in his hand. Why give it to me? Nathan's voice was even. So you remember that fire doesn't always destroy. Sometimes it just changes the shape of what remains. Inside the shuttle, he strapped in alone. There was no escort. No farewell ceremony. Just a console blinking in standard interface, requesting his destination. He entered Earth. The system blinked red. Confirmed. Deathworld class. Atmospheric clearance restricted. Proceed? He pressed yes. The ship began to rise. Below, the Academy shrank into silver-gray curves. The courtyard dimmed. The hologram of Earth flickered once, then steadied. As the stars sharpened into view, Nathan leaned back. The pressure in his shoulder flared slightly as the gravity stabilizers activated. He didn't move. Pain was expected. Back in lecture hall Theta 9, a new lecture was already scheduled. Title: Adaptive Cognition Under Environmental Duress. The author, Professor Veskar. It began with no preamble. Just a single line projected in quiet white text. Curiosity didn't build human civilization. It built fire. Civilization came later when we learned how to carry it without burning the world down. There was no laughter that day. Only silence. And the faint glow of a small black rock still sitting on the edge of his desk. Still warm. Still slightly radioactive. Still surviving.